I swear it wasn't supposed to mean anything. That look. It just happened. Like a light flickering on in a room that had been dark for too long. And once it did, I couldn't unsee her. It was late afternoon at the auto repair shop, heat buzzing off the asphalt, and I was elbow deep in an engine that hadn't been touched since before I was born. The radio mumbled an old song no one had the energy to change. That's when she walked in, my stepsister's boyfriend's aunt, I think. Or friend. Or something like that. I didn't even know at first. Just that she didn't look like anyone who belonged here. She had this quiet, careful way of stepping through the cluttered floor, eyes scanning the mess without judgment. A silk scarf knotted around her neck, even though it was too hot for scarves. She was maybe mid-40s, maybe a bit older, but she carried herself like someone who had already learned how to survive being watched. Her car was old, a deep green sedan with dull chrome that caught the light in pieces. She told me it made a noise, like a sigh, and somehow that description felt more accurate than anything mechanical I could diagnose. "Do you have time to take a look?" she asked, voice low but sure. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual, wiping my hands on a rag that already had no clean spot left. She smiled at that. Not a full smile, more like the ghost of one, caught halfway between amusement and politeness. I remember her hands. Small, steady. The way her thumb brushed the strap of her bag, like she was keeping herself anchored. There was something deliberate about her stillness. Like she was used to waiting, not impatiently, but protectively. I popped the hood, and she came closer, just enough that I caught the faint scent of her perfume, something woody, understated. It wasn't sweetness that hit me, it was warmth. A quiet kind that lingers without asking to. "So, what do you think?" she asked after a minute. I looked down at the engine, pretending to focus. Could be the timing belt. Or maybe it's just tired. She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that sounds like it's remembering something. "Aren't we all?" That made me glance up. And there it was, the look. Short, but it felt longer than it should have. The kind of look you only notice when it's already over. It wasn't flirtation. Not exactly. More like recognition. Two people who didn't expect to be noticed, realizing they just had been. She stepped back then, almost too quickly. Adjusted her scarf. Looked anywhere but at me. "I'll leave it with you. Then," she said, tone back to business. "Sure," I replied, but my voice caught a little. She didn't seem to notice. Or maybe she did. When she turned to leave, sunlight slipped through the open door and caught in her hair. A few strands lifted, then fell back into place. She paused at the threshold, fingers grazing the frame before she walked out, like she was bracing herself against something invisible. After she left, I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the space she'd been standing in. The air still held her scent, the echo of her voice. I wiped my hands again, but they wouldn't stop trembling. The other guys joked about customers all the time. They'd say things, laugh, move on. But I couldn't. Not this time. There was nothing funny about the way my chest felt, like I'd just stepped too close to a fire I hadn't realized was burning. I told myself it was nothing. Just another customer. A simple interaction. But as the day went on, every sound, the hum of tools, the radio static, even the hiss of the air compressor, faded behind the memory of her laugh, that small tilt of her head. And when I closed the shop that evening, I found myself looking out toward the road, half hoping her car would still be there, half dreading it might be. She'd only looked at me once. But once was enough to undo something I didn't know was wound so tight inside me. She came back 3 days later. I wasn't expecting her, but I'd been looking anyway, at every car that slowed outside the shop, at every sound of heels on concrete that wasn't hers. The afternoon light was pale this time, fading early into that gray-blue that makes everything feel quieter than it is. I was tightening a bolt on an engine block when I heard her voice. "Still working late?" I turned. She stood by the open doorway again. Same car, same scarf, though now it was tied a little looser, one end hanging as if she'd stopped caring halfway through the knot. "Couldn't get it to start again," she said, forcing a small smile. "I think it misses your attention." I laughed, but it came out awkward. That, or it's just dramatic. She raised an eyebrow, half amused. Maybe both. There was something different about her today, not in appearance, but in the way she held herself. A tiredness, maybe. The kind that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from trying too hard to stay composed. I offered her the stool near my workbench. You can sit if you want. This might take a bit. She hesitated before lowering herself, smoothing her skirt with both hands, as if giving herself permission to be still. The sound of my tools filled the silence for a while. Small clinks, the soft hum of the lamp. She spoke first. Do you ever feel like some things break just to remind you how fragile they are? I looked up. Her eyes were on the floor, fingers tracing the rim of a paper coffee cup she hadn't finished. The light hit the small lines around her eyes, not harshly, but tenderly, like proof of laughter she didn't show much anymore. Yeah, I said quietly. Engines. People. Same thing, I guess. That made her glance at me. Quick, assessing. A faint smile tugged at her lips, but it didn't last. Your hands, she murmured suddenly, almost to herself. You're careful with everything you touch. I wasn't sure what to do with that. So I just said, force makes things worse. She nodded slowly, eyes unfocused. I used to know that. Something in her voice cracked around the edges. Then she cleared her throat, straightened up, and the guarded version of her came back. The one that hides behind composed gestures and polite tone. I wanted to ask what she meant, but I didn't. I just worked, slower now, pretending to study the carburetor while watching her reflection in the metal. After a while, she stood. You don't talk much, do you? Guess not, I said. I like that, she said softly, almost a whisper. I froze, wrench in hand, heartbeat too loud. She realized what she'd said, pressed her lips together, and looked away quickly. I mean, people talk too much. It's nice, the quiet. Yeah, I managed, voice low. Sometimes it says more. She exhaled a small laugh, half embarrassment, half something else. Then she reached for her bag, her hand brushing mine as she did. Just a graze, but it felt like static, too brief, too sharp. Thank you, she said. For what? She paused in the doorway, eyes meeting mine. For listening. And then she was gone again, the bell above the door ringing once before the silence folded back in. I stood there long after, her words still hanging between the air and my chest, quiet, simple, and impossible to shake. Rain started before sunset, slow at first, then heavy enough to drown out the hum of the city. I'd stayed late at the shop again, mostly because it felt easier than going home. The smell of oil and rain mixed in the air, the kind of scent that clings to everything. Her car headlights cut through the downpour before I even heard the engine. She parked crookedly, rushed from the car with her coat over her head, laughing as she reached the door. Sorry, she said, breathless. I didn't think it would hit this hard. You shouldn't be driving in it, I said, taking her coat as she shook the rain from it. Neither should you be working. I wasn't, I lied, setting the coat aside. Just cleaning up. She smiled, small but knowing. You say that every time. The power flickered, once, then again. The radio died. The shop went half dark, only the small lamp near the workbench throwing a circle of gold light around us. Outside, rain hammered the metal roof like it was trying to get in. She sat on the stool again, rubbing her palms together for warmth. Guess I picked a good time to break something again. What is it this time? She held out a set of keys, dangling them from one finger. Window won't roll up. The rain's coming in. I took the keys, fingers brushing hers just briefly. Her hands were cold, but steady. I'll take a look. I bent by the car door, working in silence. The rain softened, drumming a rhythm that made the quiet feel too intimate. She came to stand beside me, close enough that I could feel her presence before I saw her reflection in the window. You always stay this late? She asked quietly. Sometimes. Because you want to, or because you don't want to go somewhere else? I hesitated. Both, maybe. She nodded like she understood too well. Yeah. Her voice cracked slightly on the word, and I looked up. She wasn't crying, not even close, but something in her expression was pulling apart. Is everything okay? I asked. She smiled without looking at me. Just one of those days where everything feels heavier than it should. A phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She checked it, and for a second, her whole body went still. The screen lit her face in a blue glow, unreadable, but distant. She silenced it without answering. Someone waiting for you. I asked before I could stop myself. She exhaled through her nose, shaking her head. No, just someone who still thinks they should be. I didn't say anything. Just stood there with her, the air between us warm and thin. The storm outside made the world feel smaller, like the two of us had slipped somewhere we weren't supposed to be. When I handed her the keys back, our fingers touched again, slower this time. Neither of us moved right away. Her eyes lifted to meet mine, searching, uncertain. The light flickered once more. She whispered, "You should go home." "So should you," I said. But neither of us moved. The sound of rain softened, almost tender now, and for one suspended heartbeat, she didn't step back, and I didn't, either. Then her phone buzzed again, sharp and intrusive. She blinked, as if waking from a dream, and stepped away. "Thank you," she said, barely audible. "For fixing it." I nodded, throat too tight to speak. She left quickly, the door closing behind her with a quiet thud. And just like that, the world was bigger again, emptier, colder, and still echoing with everything we almost said. She came after closing again. No appointment this time, no broken part to fix, just her, standing in the doorway like she wasn't sure whether to step inside or walk away. The shop was quiet. Only the ticking of a cooling engine filled the space. Outside, the streetlights buzzed faintly, their glow leaking through the windows in soft gold bands. "I didn't plan on coming," she said finally. "I didn't plan on waiting," I replied, and instantly wished I hadn't said it out loud. She looked at me for a long time, then walked in, closing the door behind her. The sound of the latch felt final somehow. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I wiped my hands, though there was nothing on them. She crossed her arms, not in defensiveness, but as if holding herself together. "I keep thinking I'll stop showing up here," she said quietly. "But then I find myself driving anyway." "I know," I admitted. "I keep thinking I'll stop waiting by the door." That earned a breath of a laugh from her, not amusement, more disbelief. "This is stupid, isn't it?" "Probably. And yet." "Yeah," I said, "and yet." She took a slow step closer, then another. I could see the way her shoulders trembled, not from fear, but from restraint. "I'm too old for this," she whispered, half to herself. "Too old for what?" She shook her head. "For wanting something I don't even understand." The honesty in her voice stripped everything else away. I didn't move. I didn't trust myself to. She leaned against the workbench, eyes unfocused, and exhaled a shuttered breath. "Every time I leave this place," she said, "I tell myself it was the last time. That it doesn't mean anything. That you're just—" She stopped, voice breaking before she finished the sentence. I swallowed. "And what if it does mean something?" That made her look up. Our eyes locked. A silence that wasn't empty this time, but full, like the air had weight. She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me, searching for something she maybe didn't want to find. "You're young," she said finally. "You'll forget this." "Maybe," I said. "But you won't." That hit something. She turned her head sharply, blinking hard, as if trying to shake off whatever that truth stirred in her. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did." Her voice was steady again, but her hands weren't. She tried to hide it, fingers tracing the edge of the bench, gripping it when she thought I wasn't looking. Then the silence came back, thick and raw. Only our breathing filled it, uneven, mismatched. I wanted to step closer, to reach out, to do something. But I didn't. She didn't either. We just stood there, two people surrounded by everything unsaid, the space between us trembling with what neither of us had the courage to name. She finally spoke, her voice low, breaking apart at the edges. "I don't know what we're doing, but I can't seem to stop." And before I could answer, before I could even breathe, she turned and left, leaving the door half open behind her, as if the air itself might finish what we couldn't. I didn't see her for almost 2 weeks. Long enough for the days to stretch thin and start to blur, long enough for me to convince myself it had ended quietly. That silence was the answer she couldn't say out loud. Then one evening, I found her scarf, the same soft, worn silk one, folded on my workbench. I didn't remember her leaving it. I picked it up like it might still be warm, still hold some trace of her. There was a note tucked beneath it. Not long, just a few words in her looping, deliberate handwriting. If you find this before I do, don't call. Please. No name, no explanation. I stared at it for a long time. That careful handwriting that looked like it had been rewritten a dozen times before she could let it go. And then, as if on cue, the shop door opened. She stood there, not composed this time. Not the woman who always smoothed her hair and chose her words like stepping stones. Her hair was loose, her face bare of its usual control. She looked human, exhausted, beautiful in a way that hurt to see. I came for that, she said, nodding toward the scarf. I handed it to her, wordless. She held it tightly in her hands, eyes not meeting mine. Sorry, she murmured. I didn't mean for you to find it. I'm glad I did. That made her look up, and something in her eyes flickered between gratitude and guilt. You shouldn't be. There was a long pause, just the sound of the rain outside. Not hard, just steady, tapping against the windows like time refusing to stop. I got a message today, she said finally, from someone I haven't heard from in years. I waited, saying nothing. It was his birthday, she went on softly. I forgot until my sister sent an old photo. Him, me, and someone who looked a little like you. Her eyes found mine then, steady now. That's what this is, isn't it? Memory, trying to start over. You remind me of him, not in the way you look, but the way you don't look away. I felt the floor shift beneath something I couldn't name. Who was he? She smiled faintly, but it was the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. Someone I lost before I learned how to stop losing people. I wanted to ask more, but she was already retreating inside herself, the practiced distance she wore when emotion threatened to spill over. I'm sorry, she whispered. You didn't ask to carry this. I don't mind, I said too quickly. I know, she said, and that's what scares me. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was deep, like a heartbeat shared between two people who suddenly realized they weren't standing in the same moment anymore. She folded the note once more, tucked it into her coat pocket. Then she reached out, just once, and placed her hand on mine. Not soft, not trembling, just firm enough to make sure I would remember it. Don't wait for me, she said. You deserve someone who isn't still living with ghosts. And then she was gone, leaving only the faint scent of her perfume, the folded air where her hand had been, and the quiet understanding that I had become part of a story that began long before I ever met her. I didn't expect to see her again. After that night, the note, the confession, the goodbye, I'd convinced myself that was the end of whatever this had been. But endings are never clean. They fray, they linger. It was late, the shop empty, the kind of quiet that feels too big. I'd stayed to finish paperwork I wasn't actually doing. The door creaked open, just a little, and before I even looked up, I knew it was her. She stood there without her scarf this time, rain dampening her hair. No words, just breathing, both of us waiting for the other to fill the silence. You said I shouldn't wait, I said finally. I know. She closed the door behind her, leaning against it. I tried not to come back. How'd that go? She smiled, barely, but it was real. I failed. That word hung in the air between us. Failure. As if what stood between us could ever be measured that way. I gestured to the small table in the corner. 2 mugs, 1 chipped. She joined me there, sitting across from me like we'd done this 100 times before. Neither of us spoke for a while. The sound of rain was softer now, steady and low, a kind of rhythm that didn't ask for attention. When she finally did speak, her voice was fragile in a way I hadn't heard before. I kept thinking about what you said about meaning something. I met her eyes. And I think you were right. It does. It shouldn't, but it does. She looked away then, tracing her finger around the rim of her mug. I didn't come back for the car, she said quietly. I came because I wanted to see if I could just sit here and not feel guilty about it. Can you? She breathed in, then out. Not really. But I'm tired of pretending I don't want to try. There it was. The truth. Not loud or desperate, just honest. We didn't move closer right away. We just sat there, the distance between us feeling smaller with every second. Then, without looking at me, she reached across the table. Her hand found mine, not searching, not trembling. Just there. Warm, steady, human. I turned my hand over, let her fingers rest in my palm. No words, just breath and pulse. For a long time, that was enough. I don't know what happens now, I said. Nothing has to, she whispered. Maybe this is all it ever needs to be. Outside, thunder rolled far away, not sharp, not violent. Just a low reminder that the world kept turning. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against the back of my hand. It wasn't a kiss. It wasn't even quite touch. It was surrender, gentle, unspoken. When she finally looked up, her eyes were clear. I think we stopped pretending. I nodded. Yeah, I think we did. Neither of us said goodbye. We just sat there, hands still joined, the rain softening into silence. And for once, silence didn't mean restraint. It meant peace. The kind that doesn't need to last forever to be real. It's been months since I last saw her. Sometimes I still catch myself looking toward the shop door when the bell rings, half expecting her to walk in, pretending she just needs something fixed. But she doesn't, and I don't think she ever will again. That's okay. The days feel quieter now, not empty, just slower. The kind of quiet that follows a long storm when the air finally feels clean again. I still have her scarf. She told me not to keep it, but it's here, folded in the drawer beside the register. I don't take it out often. Just knowing it's there is enough, like a memory I don't need to relive to believe in. I think about that night sometimes. The one where nothing happened and everything changed. We didn't make promises. We didn't plan anything. We just stopped lying, to each other, to ourselves. That was enough to change everything. She taught me something I didn't expect to learn. That love, real love, isn't always about keeping someone. Sometimes it's about seeing them, fully, once, and letting that truth stay with you. It's not loud or cinematic. It's quiet, patient, a kind of knowing that lingers even when the person is gone. Before her, I thought love was supposed to be clear, a direction, a decision, something you could name. But she made me realize it's more like weather. It passes through, changes the air, and leaves you different without meaning to. I heard she moved. Somewhere near the coast, where the air is saltier and the days run softer. Someone told me she teaches now, art, or maybe literature. That fits her. She was always better at drawing meaning from silence than anyone I've known. As for me, I still fix cars. Still wipe my hands on the same old rag. Still stay later than I need to. But I listen differently now. To the hum of engines, to the pauses in conversation, to what people don't say but leave hanging between words. And every so often, when the light hits the dust in the shop just right, I think about that moment, her hand over mine, the rain outside, the quiet that wasn't empty anymore. We didn't end up together, but that doesn't make it any less real. Some connections aren't meant to be stories that last forever, just the ones that remind you what it feels like to be alive inside your own skin again. She looked at me once, and somehow, that was enough to change everything I thought I knew about love. And maybe that's the point, not the ending, but the becoming. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?